Okay, thank you.
All right, so to the topic du jour. Gentlemen, we were tasked to bring some data forward and to look at where we align and perhaps find ways to negotiate on where there might be a misalignment. Now, I'm just going to, for notes purposes, we're going to discuss a couple of the issues, and then we'll confirm whether or not we want to work, downwards or upwards or downwards. So, Harold, I'm going to ask you, out of all of the things that are outlined within our, all of the sections that are outlined within our community plan, from the most important to the least important, which chronologically, and that would be GFA, lot width, and heights and all of these things, how would you rate them? And then Peter, I'll ask you the same question. And then what we're going to do is we're going to choose which ones to talk about first, and then start discussing each one of the respective amounts that we feel would be appropriate, and see what we can knock off the table very quickly. So which do you feel are in chronological order, from the most important through to the least important? They're all important, mind you, but just the most contentious to perhaps the least contentious.
Well, before we get to that, I guess to me, I realized originally this conversation was about redesigning the community plan, but at what stage are we in negotiating some sort of way forward regarding GFA?
Well, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to look at each one of these and see where we are with each other, because there could very well be an alignment on GFA, and we might be able to knock that off very quickly. And then once everyone's in agreement, we take it back to our respective boards, ratify them, and then if everyone's in agreement, start communicating both through the community as well as the township that this is where the associations want to be, and the next steps from there, whether the township wants to run with the survey. I don't believe that they will. Rather, I think they're just going to look to the associations to confirm whether we communicate that at now that everyone's returning back to the lake, saying this is where we are, and there's an opportunity for those that wish to contribute their comments to it, perhaps have like a quasi public meeting to discuss it, where both associations have their representatives speaking to why the association is in agreement. I don't know. Let's just address this first on where we see alignments and where perhaps we're a little bit of a gap, and that's why I need hard numbers, and that's why I requested hard numbers.
Well, I guess to my earlier point, if the SMLRA are successful in pursuing their application for the OPA, GFA will not be an issue in the community plan any longer, because GFA will be removed.
But that will be the OP. I believe GFA is still in our I believe GFA is still in our bylaws, and so.
Well, no, I know, but as far as our community plan, because if we're just talking about the community plan, then GFA, according to the OPA, all mention of gross floor area will be taken out, and the caps. So then it becomes a bit of a moot point. If we're going to talk about GFA, we need to talk about it as it pertains to the zoning bylaw, because I think my understanding is now that the OPA has been restarted, it's in the works. There's not much point talking about it until either it gets approved or voted down by planning council.
Well,
Peter, do you have
we've discussed this in great detail at our board, and we're in a similar position right now, where for one, to discuss hard numbers, we would have to canvass our members to ask them what they think would be appropriate numbers if and when it gets to that point. We're at the first phase of our OPA application. We don't know how it's going to turn out, positive, negative, or modified. So at that point, we would consider things going into phase 2, where we would possibly discuss wording in the zoning bylaw, or there's other actions we have to take based on how the OPA application turns out. So at this point, unfortunately, we're not in a position to discuss hard numbers. We may be in the future, but we would have to canvass our members with different scenarios or different, because it all depends. Are you talking about just numbers, or are you talking about the definitions are linked to the numbers, right? So somebody might be okay with a bigger GFA if the definitions are all gone. So there's many factors here that are not settled yet. So I can't really discuss hard numbers today, unfortunately.
Well, and I guess, my point, and I made it clear, I think, in my last email to the two of you, I really want to know where the SMLRA stands on the whole concept of GFA. Because currently my understanding is that it's, as per the Weatherall report, still in that GFA will be removed from any consideration as far as cottage size, that it will strictly be lot coverage, setbacks, and height and width. And so I've never heard yet, Peter, anything contrary to that from the SMLRA. So
Gentlemen, if I can very quickly, in my last email to everyone, I had asked that we come with numbers, and these numbers are not fixed numbers. Rather, a general understanding of where everyone's mind is at. And I understand, Peter, that you have to canvass your members, and Harold will probably have to do the same. But it's more so a starting point. The chicken before the egg scenario comes into play here, whereby do you canvass your membership to find out what they want and then stick to those numbers? Is there going to be some wiggle room here with respect to some understanding? Are we going to negotiate, or are we just going to take hard lines on what each other's memberships want and always be at an impasse? So the idea here, guys, is that we talk real numbers now, okay? And if we don't have those numbers, then we can break and come back a week from now, 2 weeks from now. The idea here is that these hard numbers, again, are not set in stone. They're here to be used as starting points to see whether or not we agree that there is common ground. And the GFA question, whether or not there's success in the OP amendment or not OP amendment, it's still not going to be any different, because if there's a modification, if the OP amendment is successful, then yes, you're right, GFA that no longer becomes a question or a problem. However, we still should at least assume that there could be a modification, or it fails and gets defeated, at which point we should still have a common ground as to where it is and where we want to see this lake.
And Christian, getting rid of mention of GFA in the OP doesn't get rid of GFA, because GFA is all over the zoning bylaw. The question is the next step after the SMLRA, if they're successful of getting GFA taken out of the OP, are they then going to pursue having GFA taken out of the zoning bylaw? And that's really, to me, the elephant in the room, as it were. Are we talking, is there a point in even talking about GFA? I have all kinds of suggestions on where we could go, but if the SMLRA is not at all interested in considering GFA as a restriction of cottage size, then we're spinning around, biting our tails.
Well, we haven't had an opportunity to discuss the next phase with our planner yet, Stefan. I think it all depends on how this first application turns out. If it's modified, or I think we would all have time. Like say it gets deferred or something, and they want the council wants modifications to it. at that point, we'd have to consult our planner, and perhaps if it gets to that point, discussing hard numbers, maybe we discuss it at that point. But we have not discussed this with our planner yet. He's more focused on the OPA part, and that's why we offered to, in the Weather Hall report, you'll notice that there was suggested zoning bylaw wording, and we offered to take that out, and we did, just so it didn't cause any confusion. So this planning stuff is all very complicated, and that's why the professionals know what they're doing. So by taking the suggested wording out for the zoning bylaw, we thought it would remove some confusion of how it's separated between, in my understanding, it's the OPA amendment, and then there's a zoning bylaw wording, or I don't know if it's negotiations or what happens then. I'm not even sure myself, but I don't think it's time. Like we could be doing this now and then doing it again and then doing it again, like if you know what I mean. Like, it's not.
Gentlemen, we have 5 different things to discuss here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just based on my initial preliminary notes. Regardless of whether or not the OP is successful or not, that is just the beginning step of what is going to be a long, lengthy road. And I do not feel personally, and this is my own personal opinion, and I want to emphasize that there's going to be, geez, will my phone, hold on guys, hold on one second.
I think in the interim, Peter, for me, the question is GFA in or out? If your intention is that GFA is out, then that's a completely different kettle of fish.
Right.
If GFA is in, then we can sit down and say, well, what do we do? Do we modify the explanation of what is GFA, or do we play with the size cap, leave the explanation in and just raise the size cap? Like, that's really the thing. But if,
gentlemen, if I can, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry, Harold, if now that I'm back, and I do apologize, but
Okay.
she called me 4 times, and anyways, just wanted to make sure it wasn't an emergency there.
I'll repeat what I was just saying to Peter. Really, I come back and I'm sounding even more repetitive, but really the issue is, are we using GFA or not? If we're not using it, then that's a completely different conversation. If we are using GFA, then the conversation focuses on what, Christian, what you were suggesting, that we come prepared to talk about what kind of cap we would have, what size cap. Maybe we talk about what's in the definition of GFA, is it, do basements go in or are basements out, that type of thing. But if we're not intent on using GFA, then that's a completely different conversation.
Gentlemen, as I was about to say, and I apologize for the interruption there, my personal opinion is that even if the OP is successful, I don't believe that the township is going to allow 6 Mile Lake to just open up the floodgates and allow any and all development. So if the OP is successful and GFA is removed from the OP, it's still going to be hard baked into our bylaws. And I, frankly speaking, don't feel planning department is going to advocate for the removal of GFA at this point in time. So this brings us back to, we need to discuss and find a common ground on GFA to make sure that even if it is removed from the OP, that we do have a common understanding and agreement to where we all see and envision a GFA type bylaw. Perhaps it's not gross floor area, rather there's restrictions on the total size, but still used in a square footage footprint. We should all try to achieve a common ground here and now. And I get that it's not being vetted by your membership, and I get that it's not been vetted by your board, but it is a point to discuss at this point in time. We can talk in circles and beat around the bush over and over and over again on hypotheticals and never, ever, ever come out of the conversation with anything tangible. And that's not what this working group is, because frankly, it's a waste of all of our time. It is for us to be able to find common ground to work and build from there. Let's establish a baseline and move forward from that point forward. Peter, by you providing what your thoughts are, what the board's thoughts are with regards to a GFA-like, total amount of build or livable, habitable space, I want you to understand that this is not prejudicial against your claim or your OP and perhaps even the removal of it later on. We're not going to hold you to, or the board, and say, hey, FYI, they had this discussion, and therefore we expect them to hold, to live up to this. It is a discussion, a frank discussion between the two associations to see what we can do going forward. And perhaps there's different ways of skinning the cat. Perhaps there is a way to remove GFA, but then, increasing lot width, lot coverage, or whatever it may be, in order to ensure that we're still keeping the same size footprint. But what does that footprint look like? That's what we need to do right here, right now, is, what is that footprint going to be acceptable on our lake? Do we just open up the floodgates and allow 10,000 square foot monster cottages, on our lake? Is that what we all want to see? Or do we want to actually have some controlled development here? And if it is, what do we in principle agree to without the confirmation of our membership and without the confirmation of our board at this point in time? Like I said, once we get that kind of idea, we then start to go back to the board and say, hey guys, does this work? Once the board say yes, it works, then we go back to the memberships and say, hey membership, does this work? So that's what I was hoping to do today, and I still would very much like to achieve that within the next 30 minutes.
I'm prepared to kick things off. And this sort of starts with your comments at the last meeting that we had with Stefan, where you said something to the nature of, you thought 3,000 square feet was reasonable as long as it was 3,000 square feet of habitable space. And this sort of speaks to the big problem that we seem to all have had when they rewrote the definition of what GFA is in 2014, that a lot of habitable space was lost due to the fact that they had included things like covered entranceways and excluded storage space from the basement. And basements were in, but they allowed for any storage space. And in 2014, all these changes were made because there were loopholes that people were abusing, taking advantage of. And so, they closed the loopholes, but they didn't add to the cap. They kept the cap at 275 square meters, but they added about 1,000. They took out about 1,000. I'm going to talk in square feet. They kept the cap at 2,950 square feet, but they took out about 1,000 square feet of usable habitable space by changing the definition. So my thinking is, what if we were to add that usable habitable space into the cap, which would bump it up to about 4,000 square feet instead of 2,950? Surely that would satisfy the what was lost in 2014.
Peter, do you have any comments to that?
Well, I'm sure there's eventually going to be a number, I guess, when everybody's comfortable with, but I'm not prepared to shoot from the hip here today without consulting our professional planner and our membership and our board. I can't. What numbers am I going to throw at you that are not going to be good next week? You know what I mean? Like, it's not. I don't think it's the right time. I think we have to know where the OPA lands, and then we have to reconvene, we have to reorganize, we have to reconsult our professionals and understand what our next step is. I don't see throwing numbers off the cuff here that's going to help anything.
Can you talk to your planner and ask him about what he
Harold,
thinks about?
I'm just going to spare us. I'm going to spare us the time. Peter, it doesn't sound to me like you're prepared to want to open up and dialogue and have conversations with regards to how to rectify this situation. Rather, you seem, you're perhaps, and I'm speaking on behalf. You're here on behalf of the 6 Mile Lake ratepayers, and I'm going to assume that this is echoed on from their board. It seems that you just want to focus on where the OP is going to go, and you're just going to take your approach, and that's going to be your approach, and there's no need for discussion. So I'm gonna forego.
I don't appreciate being pigeonholed into a situation here. So I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's not the appropriate time to discuss these matters. It will be down the road, perhaps. But don't push me into a corner here where you're saying that it's our way or the highway. That's not the case at all. So I don't appreciate
what I'm hearing is I'm hearing that at this point in time, you feel that it's not appropriate to have a conversation, nor based on my previous email requesting that everyone come forward with some hard numbers. Are you prepared to provide those numbers with respect to where, just as a preliminary kind of, good faith attempt to say, guys, this is where we roughly feel that this things could be? I'm hearing that right now you just want to focus on the OP. I'm not pigeonholing you. I'm just reiterating what you're saying here.
That's correct. It's not the appropriate time to discuss the hard numbers.
Okay. Harold, I'm going to then propose that we conclude this working group. I'm not prepared to invest any more of my time, talking in circles. I don't think that this is going to be fruitful. And from what I'm hearing right now, we're not seeing, any movement on one party. And when we come into conversations in good faith, usually it's reciprocal. I think the term good faith has a reciprocal component to it. And based on Peter's position right now, I don't feel that there's going to be any reciprocation. So let's end it as it stands right now. Peter, good luck with your OP. Sorry, Harold, go ahead.
Well, no, I just want to finish by saying, and all I want to say this in the spirit of peace and goodwill, that I am always willing to discuss. If the SMLRA wants to discuss some sort of a way forward regarding GFA, regarding numbers, I am always willing to come to the table and try and work something out. At the end of the day, what I care about most of all is what does the whole or the majority of the lake want to see, and how are we going to get there? And that's all.
Great. Well, gentlemen, thank everyone for your time. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to move forward. Peter, good luck with your application. And Harold, if you need to talk to me, you're welcome to it. Peter, if you'd like to talk to me, you both have, my contact details. Let's.
I'm sure we're going to chat. I'm sure we're going to chat in the future. No worries.
Agreed.
Okay.
Everyone, gentlemen, enjoy your afternoons. Thank you.
Thanks, Christian.
Good day. Bye now.